Welcome back, my oodles and noodles. We are going to do a little review today of a new kind of book. No longer will we be looking at typical fantasy novels, which I've been kind of doing for most of this channel's length. I'm trying out something new today, the Puppy War. Now, some of you are thinking, Jason, that's still fantasy. Yes, it is. But it's weird. It's strange. It's different. It's mysterious. It was also really critically acclaimed. And guess what? I'm here to say I'm not really feeling it, folks. I'm not really feeling it. Let me explain why. What is this story about? What is the Puppy War about? So it is obviously set in a country that, for shits and giggles, it's basically China, or at least it seems like, unless I'm misreading the entire story to the umpteenth degree. I did not research this. I try to read a book without knowing too much about what the author was trying to do. I want to read it and just have a general feel of it without knowing other people's thoughts and opinions, especially when I go to review it. So I'm assuming this is China. It completely makes sense. We are looking at a country, Nakan, that effectively seems to have been, after multiple poppy wars, so opium wars, again, pretty much giving away that it seems like it's China. We have our ancient enemy from an island that they've been going at it with for a while, that pretty much sounds like Japan. And so if that was the basis of the story and it was just going to be a historical reenactment, sort of with some extra elements thrown in, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more, but there's a lot that was thrown in here, specifically through our main character, Rin, that actually turned me off, more so because the direction of the novel and quite frankly, the style to me seemed to change in a very strange way a third of the way through the book. So we start off with our main character, Rin. She is a poor girl who unfortunately is growing up under the thumb of the local gang, effectively, and she works at the shop for them, and she's really good with numbers, and she's about to be sold off, effectively, to be someone's wife. And this person is not attractive. She does not want to go there. He's much older than her. She thinks of it much more like a death sentence. So this is pretty interesting at first because, the story could have gone down the route of, oh, she's going to end up as that person's wife, but she does other things. Instead, the story takes us in a completely different direction. Apparently, there are exams that a person can take, and through these exams, known as the Keiju or Kuje, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it properly. Through this exam, you can get brought into these academies that exist throughout the land, and by doing that, she could effectively escape, because you have to go to one of these things. But more specifically, if you go to Seingard, which is the academy she's aiming to, which is the military academy run by the government, that effectively, if you go to, you become a general or some kind of officer. And she really wants to go there. The only thing is, to go there, you either have to be loaded out of your mind or extremely smart. You have to ace this test that they give, and most people do not in the slightest do it. And so the way that the novel is showing her effectively accomplishing her goal to make it to Seingard is really interesting. It's effectively just pure self-discipline and rage guiding this girl to get to that point, and it's really great. And when she does accomplish this goal and she gets to Seingard, of course, she's a poor peasant girl from the countryside, and everyone there is of nobility and wealth and extremely intelligent and well trained, and she solely knows some facts and figures. She hyper trained herself for this exam, but that does not mean she's been ready her whole life, trained her whole life to be there. So she then has to go through a whole subsequent level of other challenges at this place where she is not considered to belong, and a lot of people are against her. And that would be probably in itself a really interesting story. There is then the fantasy element of this novel that comes into play. And I don't want to say too much about it. It revolves around gods and goddesses and the ability to effectively make a pact or a bond with them and be able to use these kinds of abilities depending on certain factors. Can't say more without ruining it. And this element itself is extremely interesting as well. The only problem is, again, if you go through this novel about 1/3 of the way through, it no longer becomes about this character being at the academy. And that is the most interesting part of the novel. It's her learning about things. And that doesn't mean to say that this whole story had to be about that. It is a trilogy. This is the first book, of course. And it could have, effectively led to her leaving the academy. But before we even get halfway through the book, we have this very slow, steady progression where our character is growing and learning and finds her master, who's effectively teaching her all of these philosophies, and we're learning about these abilities and the gods, but it's in slow progression, very, very slow. And then all of a sudden, time skip, but multiple time skips, and we just rapidly, effectively shoot through our academy, don't even make it through the entire timeline, and then we are in a conflict. And again, this might have been okay if it wasn't for the fact that the pacing and the changes in our main character and the flow of things just fracture and die as far as I'm concerned. To be fair, before I advance forward, the novel is still really good. It's still worth a read, but I find it got completely and utterly derailed as soon as we get to the midpoint. It just had a pacing. The best way I can describe it would be, for those who have read Patrick Rothfuss's The Name of the Wind, our main character Quoth basically meets Elladan, who is a namer in that story. And Elladan is this quirky, weird character who's practically a little bit nuts, and he's teaching him things, and at the same time lots of stuff is happening around, and there's the academy, there's, you could say, multiple storylines happening within that novel and series. Now, it has a lot of its own flaws as well. I'm not holding it up as better per se, I'm simply holding it up as an example of something else. And The Poppy War very much has that. Our main character, going through so many challenges in her life, so many challenges when she actually arrives at this academy, meeting a master who is quirky and weird and extremely odd, had me laughing in so many instances. There were so many parts I was just laughing out loud. My girlfriend was looking at me super weird. I was so enjoying the dynamic between those two characters and where it was going, and I was expecting, especially at that point, another, at least probably the whole book, if not the whole book and part of the next book, being in this academy and having this experience, and instead it was just ripped out from under. And in and of itself, that could be something pleasurable, but we didn't spend enough time there to care that it got ripped out. All we care about is that, oh my God, we're suddenly just experiencing a whole different kind of story where time is rapidly passing by. So many things are happening. We are introduced to a multitude of different characters that are then killed off rapidly. No explanation. Other characters we've suddenly just heard about for a moment do something, but we don't understand why, and it's not explained in any way by the end of this novel. But I don't even care, because I literally only knew that person for one page. So why are you even showing them to me? This happened throughout the whole rest of the book. Just a bunch of different people not actually being fleshed out, whether they be villain, whether they be a character who's supposed to be on your side or someone important. Our main character makes decisions based off of certain other people that she doesn't know to the slightest degree or barely knows them, but she's acting as though she cares so much and should find them important or what they say important, but there's no reasoning for that. She doesn't know those people, or at least the story doesn't allow that fleshing out to happen. Maybe that could have been done more properly if that character had points of view themselves, or just we spent more time with them. Instead, it seems much more that two different people were writing this book. One had an idea of building up a storyline and a character and a lore and so much, And then all of a sudden another person was just like, I want fights, I want war, I want more destruction and mayhem, and just suddenly shunted the other one out and inserted that stuff in there. And in my opinion, for my preference, I would have much preferred to have a slower build up with the enemy actually being someone more knowing, no, so not knowing, sorry, more knowable, basically an enemy that we would have spent more time getting to know. Instead, that enemy is just kind of thrown in your face. No explanations are given. They're made out to be these monstrous people, but yet there's no understanding why. We don't know their culture. We don't know any point of view. We get an introduction of a character or two, but nothing is explained about them. Then they're ripped away. It's chaotic. It's messy. It is a book where someone had a whole bunch of ideas and smushed them all into one novel. Now, maybe book 2 and book 3 fixes this, spreads things out, helps things make more sense, but I really left book 1 with no sense of confusion whatsoever, more a sense of, okay, there were some really cool ideas in here, but you just bulldozed through them all. And I don't really care much anymore. This is the first book in a long while. I've read some books that were like, whatever, but this is the first book in a long while that I really don't have much of an interest to read book 2. And maybe that's to my detriment. Maybe book 2 and book 3, the author learned a lot more and everything comes out in a beautiful way. But right now I'm not feeling it, folks. I'm just not feeling it. And the fact that people held this novel up, it's so great. Conceptually, there's a lot of good ideas in here. And I don't even mind the writing style that much. It's pretty solid, especially for someone's first novel. I like the book. I just don't think it went the way it should have. Maybe that's just my problem. Probably just is. Maybe I just don't appreciate that kind of flip-flopping. I am someone who comes from a background of, especially when you have a singular point of view, the progression being a little bit more of a slope and not just this straight up shot where our character goes from one end to another extremely rapidly. That being said, again, the action scenes were pretty great. The magic system, if we want to call it that, is pretty interesting, although it's really not fleshed out well. It's mostly just kind of vague. And the pacing overall, if I ignore just this juddering lurch to a completely other direction halfway through the book, I'd say it's still pretty good overall. Our main character is interesting, although quite frankly, I found most of the decisions and how she chose to do things kind of made no sense and were very nonsensical, and she becomes a pretty unpleasant character near the end of the book. I didn't really like her. I really enjoyed her at first, but then anytime anything happened of serious note, she just made decisions that were very unattractive to me, and she sounded much more petulant and just strange overall. So again, good action, interesting lore. There are some moments, especially near the beginning of the book, that are really fun. But overall, I'd give this maybe like a 6, just because of bouncing all over the place and not fleshing things out properly. And just quite frankly, just again, moments in this novel that seemed utterly and completely pointless. There are people and situations that happen in this novel that literally, it's like, oh, big thing, and then a person dies almost instantaneously, or they're captured and then they get out in 15 seconds flat for no reason, and the enemies, how they're acting, make no sense at all and serve no purpose to the story at all. So there's a lot that shouldn't have been in here or should have been rewritten completely. But I don't know, make your own choice, decide whether or not you like this style of novel. But for me, I'm probably not going to read book 2, or if I do, it's going to be in a long while, because this overall left a pretty bad taste in my mouth, especially because I was pretty excited through the first like 50 to 60 pages. Actually, I could probably give it a little bit more, about 100, 120 pages in. I was really, really enjoying this novel. I was really enjoying the characters, just the way she was handling things. Actually, I could actually probably give it a little bit more, maybe a good 200 pages in. But yeah, it's actually depressed me a little bit. I was really looking forward to this book, and I was super excited as it first started off, but it just, after, sad life. But again, this is my own bias, my own preference. I'm sure loads of people like it. I mean, it did get critical acclaim. I'm sure it's probably just for the fact that I come from a different point of view in terms of the kinds of books that I've grown up reading, and I'm just not habituated to it. So yeah, let me know what you think down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out the website, geektease.ca. I will be coming out with another review in not long. I have the first book in Mercedes Lackey's. It's called Owl Flight. I cannot for the life of me recall the name of the series, but the first book is Owl Flight. It is an oldie, but a goodie. It's fun, it's simple, and didn't leave a bad taste in my mouth the way this book left. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. Farewell.